So again, going back to the CERN thing, I feel like we're moving further and further from reality nowadays. Does that feel like the same to you?
I mean, yeah, but why? What's got Gilbert's grape this morning?
Gilbert's grapes. What's eating Gilbert's grapes?
What's grinding your gears?
It's really squishing my almonds. No, it just like just to glaze over something. Seattle, in their truly forefront liberal ideology, task force, they're trying to wipe out the homeless. They accidentally
wait a minute. Hold on. They're not trying to wipe out the homeless.
No, they are.
They're trying to make sure that the homeless find homes. Seattle's not trying to
wipe out the homeless
people. They're trying to eradicate.
There's not going to be any more homeless people, right?
I know, but when you say it like
same.
Okay. Anyway,
that train pulls into the same station. I don't know
now
what we're talking
you
about.
And us we're on the same page about the homeless in Seattle. So, David, proceed.
So only Seattle could dick it up this hard as the Ravenclaw story about how him being like not just like a creeper, but an actual like sexual offender multiple times on minors comes out, and instead of taking a gasp and a back, they double down and they say, you know what, we're happy that he's here because sex offenders are actually they require their safety too because they're an at-risk population. It's like, okay, so you'd rather protect the predator than the innocent prey, and then couple that with the new law that, you know, people that fuck up their credit can get a loan quicker than people that kept their credit really well. That seems to be devoid of logic and actually counterintuitive. And then going back to 2008, we bail out the banks because they're too big to fail. But we bail out the banks with the taxpayers' money that were the people that got fucked over by the banks.
I feel like this is getting deeper than just Ravenclaw sex offender.
I'm just saying, like, are they doing it on purpose? Is what I'm saying. Or is it CERN? Like, do they actually believe what they're doing, what they're saying, or they're just like, are they just like
from a different reality?
Well, let's just see what we can do this week. Like, how far can we push this nudge this dial until it's just like overflow? I don't know. I just feel like I'm losing my touch with reality, or maybe I never had a hold of it to begin with.
So when David tells you he's glazing over a topic, he is glazing over a topic. Just a couple more details on this whole thing. So this is a committee in Seattle to eradicate the problem of homelessness, not the homeless themselves. And they're having a Zoom meeting where one of the board members of this committee says, hey, I'm worried about this guy. Not only is he a convicted sex offender of children, but he's actually made me uncomfortable and advancements towards me. To which one other member of the board berates her.
We won't describe her, but she's exactly what you think
she looks
like.
You're picturing.
She's exactly what you think.
She berates this other board member for bringing this up and saying this is not the forum and we don't talk about that and we don't out people's convicted criminal behavior. Like, this isn't a rumor. This is like a jury of his peers were like,
he didn't just not pay a parking ticket. Okay, he didn't forget to, register with the DMV. Like, he did stuff to innocent people that irrevocably changed them that we hold as a felony in this country.
And the angry lady is more concerned with what is a matter of public record. Again, this lady's not like airing dirty laundry for the first time. Like, it's a matter of public record that he's a convicted sex offender.
Multiple times.
Don't
forget that little
she's
nugget.
more concerned with making sure that he serves on the committee and that apparently all people deserve a home, which is irrelevant to the point of, hey, this guy has made sexual advances toward me. Again, the board member that was talking about it concerned, really, to David's point, just it's a sign of the times. We are in, if you needed any more proof, the whole weak men make hard times cycle, and we are charging headlong off that cliff, apparently led by people who think that sex offenders, deserve all the rights, respect, and dignity that anybody else does. Convicted children sex offenders, by the way, repeatedly. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, Really warms the cockles of your heart, doesn't it? Oh, okay.
On that cheery note, what are we really talking about
After
today,
that
David?
glazed donut. Meme. What's love got to do with it? Nothing with Tina Turner. Rest in power, queen. Nina Turner is fucking up again.
Yeah, we don't know if they're related, but David likes that joke.
I do like that joke a lot. But anyway, Culture Corner. The New York Times is getting out in front of a story instead of suppressing it like they normally do. Ooh.
I mean,
It's in the vernacular. You do it.
They do it a lot.
Epstein. The Trump-Russian collusion was an illusion.
Yeah,
and it's
like
official.
You heard on this podcast many times, but now we have proof.
And we're going a little off script today. We don't usually do this, but for the main topic, we're actually going to take an aside and give the floor to Dr. David Martin to describe in entertaining tone exactly the history of the no word virus thing.
And trust us, you are going to want to see that portion of the show. And the reason why David and I are taking a step back and letting just Dr. Martin deliver it's about 20, 21 minutes speech in his own words is because he says it better than anything we could add to it, first of all. Second of all, his delivery is entertaining and the note is pitch perfect with the sarcasm that he gives in certain points. And in our humble opinion, or at least mine, I'll let David speak for himself, this speech, which was delivered at the EU Parliament COVID conference, is what I think probably one of the, if not the most important speeches about the entire COVID experience, to make sure that our posterity does not forget how that all came about, who was to blame, who had a financial interest in it, and most importantly, to make sure that the grandest meme of all that came out of COVID was that all the lockdowns, all the mandatory masking and jabs and all that kind of stuff was all for our best interest, and it was just public health officials doing the best they could with the limited information they had, trying to protect us all. That meme needs to never ever be forgotten. First of all, needs to never be created, but to the extent that these people try to perpetuate it in the future to excuse themselves for what they pushed upon all of us.
See the New York Times.
This speech will by itself in 20 minutes disabuse anybody in the future of that notion. And since we can't rely on YouTube and the other gatekeepers of public discourse to not take it down, it will be forever preserved in the WMD archives by being played on this here episode.
You're welcome, America.
So this is our limited contribution to humanity, and so please stick around. And even if you only got 20 minutes for this episode, skip ahead to the main part of the episode and watch Dr. Martin's speech. You will not regret it.
But I got stuff to say.
We'll get our stuff to say out in the first 3 segments.
Okay. Well, with all that being said, you want to jump in, Dane?
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 147, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/147. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. The Culture Corner and the main part of this episode will not be on YouTube. For reasons, but you will always be able to find them on Rumble and Odyssey. And like we said about that segment at the end, you can always find the WMD podcast channel over on Rumble or Odyssey. No matter who tries to ban Dr. David Martin's speech, you'll be able to find it on our channel over there. So definitely go find your videos there. And if you're not already a subscriber and listener on Rumble or Odyssey, go over there in case our YouTube page ever gets taken away from us. You can also link up with us on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We have a private members-only Facebook page that you can get into if you support us at $5 a month. Figure out how to do that over on the website. And you can follow us on Float and Tribel. And support the show any way you can. Like, subscribe, share, buy some merchandise, one-time donation, reoccurring monthly donations. We have all the options for you. Or simply tell your friends and family about us.
And just in case we forgot to mention it, go and enjoy the Whiskey Capitalist podcast this week. We one of us made a cameo over there, and they're great guys. They support they support our podcast, and we're trying to support theirs. So we share a lot of views over there. So go ahead and go check them out at Whiskey Capitalist Podcast on YouTube or in anywhere you can find podcasts.
Yes, if I'm doing my math correctly, that should have been the 24th, which would have been on Wednesday. May 24th, 2023 is the episode that David was on with one of the co-hosts over there at Whiskey Cap Pod, Sean.
Sean and Ian are two great guys who've been on there multiple times at this point, but yeah. It's a great podcast.
And we will get them on here when we
when
we get our poop in a group and start doing live streams.
Right.
But anyway, there's extenuating circumstances completely on this side of the ledger that I will get resolved here shortly. So with that being said, we are into the meme section of the top or of the episode. And as you may have guessed from David's intro, reoccurring appearance on the show by one Nina.
We should
Turner.
come up with like a button that we push for like a repeat offender. We'd be mashing that button all the time.
Straight to jail.
Right to jail. You overcooked the chicken. Right to jail. Undercooked the fish.
So Nina has a rather brain dead take, which you can see right here as nameless faceless guy has placed next to us. And this is and by the way, I saw this actually because it was suggested to me by her making the tweet, not who she was responding to, which I also follow that page, which is a pretty funny page. If you don't follow it, go to Twitter and follow Declaration of Memes. You can see they're at Liberty Cappy. They share some pretty funny memes and stuff like that. But anyway, Declaration of Memes, explaining it for the audio only listeners who can't see it. They shared it's like a political cartoon that has like a Berlin Wall-esque type wall down the center of it. On the one side, it's poor, shanty, you can imagine. And on the other side, it's rich, very nice and fancy. And then on the poor side, it says socialist citizens. And on the rich side, it says socialist leaders. And that's it. That's the meme. You know, picture's worth 1,000 words. And that really gets the point across. And to that, one Nina Turner responded, quote, "This is what the U.S. looks like now with ultra capitalism, ... Nina, first of all, what the fuck is ultra capitalism?
Well, see, it's a level system, Dane. So like you start off as a level 5 and then you work your way up and then eventually you become like a level 50 Charizard. And I think that's what she's conflating, is that she plays a little bit too much Pokemons and not enough capitalistic mons. So she's mixing them up.
She's getting her merds all wixed up.
She's getting Didgeridoo into the Digimon. Remember Digimon?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that?
Like the Pokemon knockoff that nobody
it was like
liked?
some kind of piece of shit knockoff, but like it caught a little wave. It wasn't huge.
Like
it wasn't
months.
like Pokemon.
Like
Why
2
is
months in
Pokemon
third
still
grade.
around, by the way?
It's huge, bro. It's fantastic. It's a cultural phenomenon.
It's multi-generational.
Why are we off on this track?
Because Charizard, damn it.
I know why.
Why is he the strongest one?
I'm asking you why. I'm asking you why your brain works this way.
Well, if I could tell you.
If only.
I wouldn't be on this shitty podcast. I'll tell you what. I'd be committing some ultra capitalism is what I'd be doing.
So anyway, you know, even if Nina were not a repeat offender of the show, you, dear listener or viewer, who, you know, again, have IQs above a residential speed limit, know that when people use these terms, which are completely just out of left field and not tethered to anything other than whatever their emotional feels are of the day, know that they're usually using that as a stand-in for being completely unread on the topic. She has no idea what she's talking about. So she just throws out ultra capitalism as if to say that is anything. But anyway, let's just run with that for a second, because even though that's not a real thing, we know what she's trying to say is that, you know, The United States is completely hands-off, laissez-faire. There's not an ounce of regulation. It's like, winner take all. The age of the robber barons is here and blah, blah, blah. That's what she wants you to think of the United States economy. Well, Nina, fortunately, the Heritage Foundation every year publishes what they call the World Economic Freedom Index, and they rank the countries based on the freest economies in the world. And they look at all kinds of different factors. They look at, the overall regulatory burden on the economies, how easy it is or difficult it is to start a business, the free flow of capital and labor, things like that. All of these things factor into whether or not you truly live in a free economy, which is what capitalism is, or you live in a more regulated economy that trends towards socialism, communism, etc. And Nina might be surprised to learn, considering she thinks America is an example of ultra-capitalism, that the United States ranks 25th on this list, which isn't terrible, not great.
But when all you espouse is freedom, being 25th in the world isn't exactly great, is it?
I know, right? And you would also think that ultra would be somewhere near number 1, right? But no, America's 25th. And what's even more interesting about those 24 above them is kind of some of the players that are there. So I'm sure Nina, in her Bernie Sanders AOC type mold that she is, socialist Democrat and all that kind of stuff, will probably laud, I haven't seen her do it, but I'm sure she does, lauds the system in the Scandinavian countries. And they're always like, this is the way America should be. Free healthcare, free education, free this, free that, free da. Guess where those countries rank on the World Economic Freedom Index, Nina? Right there near the top. There, I think the 3 Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and I think Finland's up there too, but I know Sweden, Norway, and Denmark are.
Good for them.
All in the top 10. So double their position from where the United States is. So what does that suggest to you, Nina? Does that suggest to you that those social welfare programs that are so great over in those countries are paid for on the back of a not ultra-capitalist economy? Or is it that they have freer markets than even the United States, and the wealth that is generated from those freer markets helps provide for the public funding that supports all of these programs that you think are a great idea to have? So something's got to give here, Nina. Definitely your education level on the topic before you speak on it definitely has to give.
Well,
but where the wealth comes from in order to be redistributed later is a rather important question. And if you keep attacking the thing that has proven for the last 250 years to be the largest and greatest generator of wealth that humankind has ever known, which is the free exchange of goods and labor, well, you might not want to attack that thing at every turn. Just saying.
Well, you can tell who picked this topic for the day. No, it just seems like it's... Again, it's platitudes. Like, what has she suggested legislature to end this ultra capitalism or anything like that? Does she run on that platform, or does she just say shit from time to time? Like it seems like she does because she's appeared on this podcast so many goddamn times.
Until we get the button, David's going to be the button.
I'll do it myself. Anyway, but like I said, stop using flowery language and then going back to whatever the fuck you're doing, greasing the palms of the people that probably engaged in some ultra capitalism to be able to slide it your way so that you can campaign for your seat in whatever goddamn congressional body that you're sitting in, Nina. And again, she doesn't make any qualms or bring up the fact that she has to play the game too, which we all know she did, or else she wouldn't be sitting there. It's just it's hypocrisy, and it knows no bounds, and it's and it's almost insulting to the people that she's saying it to support, because she gets in there and she just says ultra capitalism. They're like, yeah, and then she goes and fucks them over again and does the same thing that she's doing all the time, which we know they do anyway. Right. So back to you, Staniel.
So I think we've said all we need to say about Nina for the day. But by the way, yes, rest in peace, Tina Turner. Tina Turner.
On ultra capitalism, rest in peace, because you don't exist.
Yes.
And right along
but
with.
For real, rest in peace, Tina Turner. Rest in peace to you. So with that being said, we're moving on to the Epstein segment. And this segment will be pretty short and sweet because the report itself is much longer, and we encourage you to read it if you haven't already. But since this topic is a little bit stale, but it's too big of a topic for us not to touch at all. It did happen the week before last.
A little heavy petting.
But Durham released his report, his 4-year-long investigation into the alleged Trump-Russia collusion, which actually was a hoax. Like, that wasn't just Trump, saying, oh, it's a hoax, it's a witch hunt. No, it actually was. Allegedly, Trump being in bed with the Russians to steal the 2016 election.
Possibly paid for by the Clinton. Mm-hmm.
Now, after his 4-year investigation, Special Investigator Durham has found that not only was there not any fire related to that investigation, there was not even any smoke. And I'm trying to remember the exact quote from the report, but it said something to the effect of, the FBI should not have even investigated this because there wasn't enough to escalate it to the level of an investigation. And that in so doing and pressing forward with the investigation of the Trump-Russia, and again, for maybe some non-US citizens that listen to this podcast or whatever that aren't really aware, basically the Trump-Russia investigation was a complete fabrication by the Hillary Clinton campaign. They paid for the guy to come up with the fake Steele dossier that allegedly connected Trump to Russians, and that they were involved in creating social media posts and all kinds of other different things that tilted the balance of the 2016 election in favor of Trump and away from Hillary Clinton. And that this was clear on the surface, according to Durham, and that it was so laughable, and all of the fingers were pointing in the direction of the Clinton campaign as opposed to the Trump campaign, that it did not rise to the level of the standards of professionalism of the FBI to even look into this thing any further than a simple, yeah, there's nothing here. But to escalate it to a full-blown investigation was very out of bounds for the FBI.
Man.
I mean, Durham didn't say this, but bordering on election tampering themselves to do this kind of thing in the 2020 election. So basically, that's it in a nutshell. The Durham Report is a scathing rebukement of the whole Trump-Russia collusion narrative. And although he didn't recommend any prosecutions necessarily, heads should definitely roll at the top of the FBI and in other federal agencies, the Department of Justice, that pushed this hoax and ultimately tampered with not only the entire Trump presidency, but also the 2020 election.
I'm not going to harken on this too much, but it seems like in the recent or past couple of weeks, the FBI has been tripping over their dick a lot. I mean, first the January 6th thing comes out where it says, like, untold agents, we can't tell you how many there were because we have to protect them, caused the greatest disturbance in our country. And then just a week later, they're coming out and saying, yeah, the thing that the FBI was investigating for the past 4 years at the behest of the Clintons and the Democratic Party, let's not fuck around here, turns out to be bullshit. Kind of like we knew it would be. Because, again, they doth protest too loudly. They try to get him on tax evasion. They could try to get him with, what was his, lawyer Cohen. They try to get Stormy Daniels to be the torpedo that sank him, even though we'll leave that alone. And then they find this other chick that comes out of the woodwork that says that he raped her. Fucking, what was who's the guy, the Supreme Justice guy that, I like beer and I drank beer.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Like Brett Kavanaugh. Like they try to Kavanaugh Trump. Like the Teflon Don is not going out by some just chick that he went to high school with or met at a bar. Like they've gone all the way down the pecking order from grand government conspiracy of the highest order to like, he might have touched a chick once that didn't like it later. Like they've run the entire gambit and they still can't stick this fucker to the wall. So like drop it. And then when they thought they finally got him with like those those classified documents in Mar-a-Lago, and the FBI and got him. They're like, he had hundreds of documents. And then a week later, Biden leaves his fucking garage unlocked, and they're like, there was 10. Okay, there was 200. All right, he had basically the entire backlog of the country in his back of his trunk, but at least it was locked. Okay, his trunk wasn't locked either. So fuck.
Which, by the way, I'm glad you bring up the whole Mar-a-Lago documents and all of that kind of stuff, kind of thing, because by the way, anybody ever heard any developments on that thing?
So
recently?
Weird, right? National security we're talking about.
Like
the fate of the world.
They went as far as to say he probably had the launch codes.
He might have given it to Kim Jong-un or or God damn, dude. Like, and then all of a sudden, then their guy does it. They're like, there's nothing to see here. He just he accidentally walked out with a couple of documents, and then it's like, here's the difference. And remember, they came out with a whole article. I forgot who did. It might have been the Times. It might have been somebody else. I don't quite remember. And I know CNN ran a bunch of shit on this, and MSNBC, of course, they did this. But like, the reasons why the Mar-a-Lago documents are completely different than the Biden.
We covered that.
Yeah, we covered that on a podcast of them covering it. So they hedged their bets, and they're like, first of all, he had hundreds. Biden only had 10. And then the week later, it's like, all right, he had thousands of documents. But then they just like, so anyway, this other chick says that she gave a blowjob to Trump and he didn't tip her afterwards. Is that what you're saying, ma'am? Like, how do we take you seriously? Go back to
That's a rhtorical question. We don't.
We can't anymore. You won't let us. Anyway, I'll soapbox gone.
So, I mean, before we move on and turn the mic over to Dr. Martin, obviously the Epstein segment here is like not only within just this one agency of the FBI, the extensive history, which again, we talked about on last week's Epstein episode, going all the way back to COINTELPRO and the decades of unconstitutional, illegal surveillance and everything else that went into that entire conspiracy fact that started out as just a conspiracy theory. But this is government-wide and driven from the top down. It's society-wide. I mean, that's exactly what happened with COVID. What happened with the whole Trump-Russia hoax thing was pure and simple confirmation bias. People on the establishment side of the ledger, I'm not even going to say like Democrats, I mean, even never Trump or Republicans, were so taken aback and shocked that he could even win, that when they were faced with a story, no matter how fanciful, they were faced with a story that gave a convenient explanation. Well, of course, I mean, yeah, that makes sense that he won now that you're telling me that Russia intervened and helped, and they just ran with it. They just ran with it. And again, that's the FBI, but that's also society. That's exactly what happened with COVID. Right? Every time they wanted to blame somebody, and that was a convenient scapegoat, a convenient, like, pre-packaged with a bow on top and perfect explanation for why this bad thing was happening to so many people, they just ran with it. And when one leg was knocked out, they just propped up another leg or, shifted the goalposts or whatever. And it's just again and again and again, it's just confirmation bias after confirmation bias. Weapons of mass destruction was simply confirmation bias. Justification for starting a 20-year, multi-trillion-dollar war. Again, this is par for the course, not only within the human experience, but then when you take a certain small subset of humans and you give them immense power, you allow them to write the rules, you allow them to exempt themselves from the own rules that they write, you turn that confirmation bias up to 11. And you not only just impact the people in their immediate circle, you can impact an entire country and sometimes the world.
And what does that do, Dane? What's that threaten?
So don't trust these bastards.
That they're always trying to protect the most important thing in this country? Protect it?
Not us, but...
Democracy?
Oh, yeah, that thing, yeah.
The biggest threat to our democracy that yet? Well, you seem like you're the biggest threat to our democracy.
Yeah, he doth protest too loudly.
Thou who smelt it doth dealt it. So anyway...
Yes.
With all that bullshit aside.
So with that being said,
you ready to get educated? You ready to go back to school with Dr.
Yes.
Martin?
Please, when the video starts here for Dr. Martin, like I said, David and I were going to go away and we're going to turn it over just to him. But when the video starts,
back for the log off.
Please don't judge him on his appearance, because again, he looks like, you know, a super brainiac, egghead, and all that kind of stuff. And is this guy going to be boring? I trust you. You'll be hanging on every word. I trust you. No, I promise you, you'll be hanging on every word. And like I said, as complex of a subject matter as this is, for him to condense it down into a 21-minute speech is nothing short of heroic, and good on him for doing it. Good on the EU Parliament. I mean, you know, we talk a lot of shit about governments in general, but good on the EU Parliament for bringing Dr. Martin in to even give this speech at all, because that lends a level of credibility to it that, you know, yours truly, or even a podcast the size of Joe Rogan, couldn't manufacture. When the COVID cultists try to dismiss what Dr. Martin has to say in this 21-minute speech, we're going to say, well, are you a better judge than the EU Parliament? Than these on-high government officials that you trusted implicitly all throughout COVID? They seem to want to hear what he has to say. Why don't you? So give it a listen. Promise you'll enjoy it. And with that, David and I will come back after he's done and do the sign off for the show. So without further ado, David didn't want to monopolize that. Did you have anything to say before we jump in with Dr. Martin?
And good on you for sticking around and having an open mind to listen to some more shit about COVID.
Yes. So here is Dr. David E. Martin at the International COVID-19 Summit at the European Parliament in May 2023. Well, there you have it, folks. That is COVID over a 8-year span in 21 minutes. David, final thoughts?
I like he brought receipts. I like he had dates and times. I like he basically turned over every rock in 20 minutes that we've been talking about for the past 3 years, pretty much. It was good. It was entertaining and as depressing as all hell.
And one thing that popped up while I was watching it here again is all of the silencing campaign and all that kind of stuff throughout COVID. Keep in mind, these are very damaging accusations to make against people like Ralph Barrick at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, or Peter Daszak. And, we've talked about these kind of shadowy figures behind the movers and shakers behind, bringing COVID to be and all that kind of stuff. And you would think that if there were, like David said, receipts on their side of the ledger to push back against these, these are more than just simple felonies. These are, treasons. These are war crimes. These are treasons. These are
against humanity.
Especially when you consider the death toll. These are crimes against humanity.
And they knew because they were coming out and saying, if we're lucky, we'll lose 1 million. If we're unlucky, we'll lose 2 million. They were willing to sacrifice 1 million or 2 million Americans, just Americans, not worldwide, Americans, for the largest distribution of wealth known to mankind.
Yeah. And, the third person in that unholy trinity, Fauci, he's all over the news, but he dismisses any talk of this kind of stuff. He won't even address it. So 2 of them won't even come out in their own defense. Again, if that was me and it wasn't true, if I was Ralph Barrick, if I was Peter Daszak, if I was Tony Fauci, I would be chomping at the bit, screaming from the highest mountaintop, these guys are liars, they're frauds, they're this, let me show you the data. Like 20 years of published research that says no vaccines for coronavirus could ever work, blah, blah, blah. I would be, front and center. I would be holding a press conference every damn day if I was Tony Fauci, pointing that all this stuff. And yet 2 of them are completely silent. You don't hear from them anywhere, probably because they're hiding under some rock. And then Fauci's not only never asked about it by the media that worships at his altar, but if there is even the subtle suggestion in that direction, he won't even talk about it. So isn't that weird right? That all of these doctors and all of these professionals, all of these experts, right? We were told to trust the experts that have come out throughout this time and pointed in the direction that's probably the truth. I mean, if you're going to level an accusation like that, like David said, you better bring the receipts, and they have. And yet all they could do to them was silence them. They're never answered. They're never met head on and said, you're wrong about this because here's why. Never. So what does that tell you? These medical professionals, these experts who have everything to lose, and some of them had their medical license either actually suspended or threatened by the medical review boards in whatever their jurisdiction is. And yet they put their necks on the line to say this kind of information, to point us, we the people, in the right direction. And yet the other side has nothing to say.
But here's another
except for shutting them down. That tells you all you need to know about this topic.
And again, don't forget about Moderna and Pfizer having their little grubby hands all over predicting the necessity for vaccines. Moderna having 4 patents just before in 2016, just before this thing went. And the only reason and then they've got Pfizer and Moderna, seeing as they made a boatload of money over the past couple of years. I'd imagine their legal teams are really fucking good. So when this comes out, like you were just saying about the individuals that were, part and parcel to this whole calamity, I'd have to imagine that these two, especially being the gigantic global corporations that they are, would stand up and fight for their honor, would stand up and fight for the fact that they're a health first corporation. But I mean, I don't see. Maybe there'll be a defamation lawsuit passed against Dr. Martin on Monday. I don't know. But like you said, he brought receipts. And they might not want to poke the bear too much too. They might want to just tamp it down, like you said, not ever engage with it. So yeah. I'm just saying, if you don't hear anything come up from any of those people that you mentioned, from Pfizer, from Moderna, against Dr. Martin, and it just kind of goes under the radar from here on out, then you have your answer. They don't want to engage because they can't engage.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about you, but in that video, Dr. Martin looked happy, healthy, and non-suicidal. So God bless him and everybody on that side of the ledger who has had the courage to step forward for having the ability to find the receipts. But B, to have the courage to step forward and give us the truth to the extent that the controllers of the narrative will allow the truth to get out. So that's why we played this video on this episode, so that it's forever in our archives, who we are also happy, healthy, and non-suicidal, forever in our archives. That way, if the YouTubes of the world, I think Rumble and Odyssey are solid platforms from a free speech perspective, and they will leave videos like this up. But to the extent the other platforms, YouTube or anybody else, tries to memory hole this thing, you can always find it at WMD Podcast. We will forever refer you back to episode 147, and we'll send you the links personally if we have to, if you want to see it in the future. So, David.
All of that being said,
you want
to wrap this up with a nice little bow there?
Let's do it. So this episode can be found at www.podcast.com/147. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. YouTube, this video is going to be heavily redacted, obviously, for that last segment, the main topic, but also the Culture Corner segment. But also, like, subscribe, and share over at Rumble and Odyssey so that you don't miss it if you are a video consumer. You can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can get in the private members-only Facebook page for $5 a month of support, and you can link up with us on Tribel and Float as well. But please, please, please join that email list, because from time to time, we'll reach out to you about events, but most importantly, it'll always keep you in contact with the show. And every once in a while, just for shits and giggles, we might drop a link to this episode 147 over on Rumble or Odyssey, just to remind you that this video is out there, and that as long as WMD Podcast exists, I can't speak for everybody else who shares the video. As long as we exist, that video will exist.
Well, isn't that something else? with all that cheeriness behind us and a new week ahead, happy Memorial Day, by the way.
Yeah.
Dane. We look forward to seeing you guys episode 148 next week. And until then, stay safe. But more importantly, guys, stay free.